Hello everybody! It's been a while since we've seen you all now. This week we're going to read a very special book called 100 Steps. It's about a very special gentleman. Do you recognise him? That's right, this is Captain Sir Tom Moore, and he was famous for saying, "Tomorrow will be a good day." Captain Sir Tom Moore, 100 Steps. On a bright April morning, a 99-year-old man stood outside his house and held on to his walking frame. His name was Captain Tom Moore, and he had pledged to walk 100 lengths of his garden in time for his 100th birthday to raise money for the doctors and the nurses risking their lives to save others. Tom took a deep breath. He knew this wasn't going to be easy, but he told himself one of the many important things that he'd learnt during his very long life. The first step is always the hardest, but unless you take that first step, you'll never finish. Tom grew up in a small town called Cayley in Yorkshire. His dad built houses and his mum was a teacher. Even though most boys avoided the kitchen in those days, Tom loved spending hours cooking with his mum, enormous cakes with coloured icing, thick crusted pies and fancy 3-course meals. She taught him that it didn't matter who you were, you can do and be anything you want. When he wasn't in the kitchen, Tom was outside playing with his dog Billy. They went everywhere together, on adventures in the garden and exploring the town. But best of all, they loved running, wild and free, on the Yorkshire moors. Billy was named after Tom's favourite uncle, who raced motorbikes and taught Tom how to ride. At night, Tom would lie in bed, remembering the roar of the engine and the feeling of freedom he felt as the wheels spun beneath him. One day, he said to himself, I'll have a motorbike of my very own. Tom worked hard at school. In lessons, he was quiet and well behaved, and he got on with his teachers and his classmates. But he wasn't above bending the rules. When he was 12, Tom bought his first motorbike and rode it everywhere he could. He would even hide it in the school grounds so that he could look at it at lunchtime. And Tom's motorbike wasn't the only thing he would sneak into school. Look at that! As Tom grew older, he spent more and more time riding his motorbike. He and Billy would spend whole days racing across the moors, grinning from ear to ear as they wind whipped through their hair and the sun bounced brightly off the motorbike. Every day can be an adventure. In 1939, when Tom was just 19, war was declared. It was a worrying time, but Tom wanted to serve his country, and so the next year he signed up as an officer in the army. Seagulls wheeled overhead as he waved goodbye to his family to go far away to fight. Tom's ship was bound for a country called Burma in Southeast Asia. It made many stops along the way, from the bustling, dusty harbour in Freetown, the capital city of Sierra Leone, to the awe-inspiring tabletop mountain in Cape Town, South Africa. It took many weeks to reach Burma, and Tom would never forget the people he met, all the incredible things he saw throughout the journey. Life in Burma took some getting used to, especially the enormous bugs and creepy crawlies that lived in the jungle, including a spider as big as Tom's hand. Oh! Tom made use of his love of engines and his talent for fixing things by teaching the troops how to ride and fix motorbikes, and then the tanks. War could be scary, and Tom missed his family, but he and his new friends made sure to have fun too. They would take holidays around the country and even travel to try and see Mount Everest, the tallest mountain in the world. But it was cloudy, so all they could see was fog. And on special occasions there were parties and concerts. Once, the famous singer Vera Lynn made a long journey from Britain to visit the troops and to sing for them. Tom could hardly believe that he was seeing her with his own eyes. And I know we'll meet again some sunny day. So, even though Tom, along with the rest of the world, was pleased when the war finally ended and he could go home, he missed his friends and the amazing sights he'd seen. Day after day, Tom worked with his dad building houses. Wow, look at that. And at night, he dreamed of the adventures he used to have. Tom wasn't ready to give up on adventure though, and he rediscovered the wonderful feeling of freedom that he'd always found riding motorbikes. He started to race in events called time trials, and he won race after race after race. Tom knew then that even when the sky seems full of dark grey clouds, the sun will shine again. And the greatest adventure of Tom's life began when he met Pamela. He thought she was the most beautiful person he'd ever seen, and he made excuses to travel the great distance between their hometowns to see her. Before long, they fell deeply in love. After Tom and Pamela got married, they had 2 little girls, Lucy and Hannah. They taught the girls about cooking and about fixing engines. Hannah was the smallest, so her job was to change the oil in the car. Tom had never forgotten the lesson his mother had taught him. No matter who you are, you can do and be anything you want. As the years went by, Tom and Pamela's family grew and grew and grew. Lucy and Hannah had children of their own. And they were always the new dogs. Harry, Tom, Pamela, Lucy, Tom, Hannah, Colin, Benji, Georgia, Charlie, Max and Thomas. Over the years, Tom made sure that the family had lots of adventures and their days were filled with laughter and a bit of mischief. And the dogs made more mischief than anyone. Oh no! Look at that! Captain Tom fell into the sea because the dogs were taking him. But sadly, when Pamela was 63 years old, she got sick, and 8 years later, she passed away. Without Pamela, Tom was very, very sad. But he surrounded himself with his family and they helped him to find happy days. In fact, these years were the happiest of his life so far. His family showed Tom that at the end of the storm, there is always a golden sky. They certainly kept him busy fixing things. He kept an eye on the garden, and even though things didn't always go to plan, he made sure to go off for the odd adventure. Oh, look at them queuing up to his fixing shed. Like travelling to Everest, so that he could finally see it with his own eyes. It was a very long journey for a 90-year-old, and Tom could hardly believe it when he saw Everest at last. The mountain rising bold and majestic ahead of him. It took his breath away. It's never too late for one more adventure. So, when a dangerous disease swept around the world, Tom knew that he had to do something to help others, just as his family had helped him. And together they had the idea to raise money by walking 100 lengths of his garden in time for his 100th birthday. Every day, Tom went out into the garden and slowly but surely walked step after step after step. And before he knew it, the whole world was watching him, because one step has the power to inspire 100 more. And that's exactly what Captain Tom did. He inspired everyone. Tom couldn't believe how many cards arrived for his 100th birthday. As he read the outpourings of love and admiration, he thought about the people who had written to him and what he would like to say in reply. So, this is what he said. For all those finding it difficult, the sun will shine on you again and the clouds will go away. Remember, tomorrow will be a good day. And there is always a tomorrow. And here are some facts about Captain Sir Tom Moore. Captain Sir Tom Moore was born in Cayley in the West Riding of Yorkshire in April 1920. Over the course of his long life, he had seen and done some extraordinary things, too many to fit in just one book. The world has changed a lot since Tom was born. When he was a little boy, his father bought the first car in their street. At that time, everything was delivered by horse-drawn cart. Imagine that! No cars. That car must have inspired Tom in his lifelong love of engines and fixing things. For when he was 12 years old, he found a motorbike in a barn and bought it for £0.50. In today's money, that's only about £9. Tom enlisted as an officer in the army in the Second World War and served in the Royal Armoured Corps in India and Burma. During the war, he saw many incredible things, including monkeys, snakes and spiders the size of his hand. Once the war was over, he flew all the way home from India in a Sunderland flying boat via Bahrain, Egypt and Italy before he landed in Poole Harbour. After the war, Tom took part in motorbike time trials and drove a three-wheeler red sports car. He was one of the very first people to drive on the first motorway in Britain soon after it opened in 1959. During the coronavirus pandemic in 2020, Tom inspired the nation by walking 100 laps of his garden in time for his 100th birthday, raising nearly £40 million for charity and providing a voice of hope during a very dark time. In recognition of his incredible work, he was awarded an honorary promotion to Colonel, a knighthood, and he was given a gold Blue Peter badge. Sir Tom Moore, an inspiration for all of us. Someone to remind us that the sun will shine on you again, the clouds will go away, and remember, tomorrow will be a good day. What will you do with your tomorrow?